I pulled up to the rusted red gate at Dry Creek Ranch, and the desert went quiet, like it was holding its breath. Blue and red lights flickered on the far fence before I even killed the engine, and a woman in a tennis visor across the street stared at me like I'd parked a UFO on her sidewalk. I set my hand on the gate my dad welded when I was 12, turned the key. I've carried half my life, told myself not to borrow trouble. Then watched 2 patrol cars creep toward my own driveway like they were afraid to wake the dust. All I wanted that evening was cedar air in my lungs, the horses breathing the hinge on the barn, complaining its old complaint. You know what I mean? 3 days of airports had left my shirt smelling like recycled air and bad coffee. So I let the land do that thing it does. I pressed my face into Scout's neck, fed him a flake, felt the weak loosen in my shoulders. And that's when the neighborhood started forming a half circle, like a theater audience, trying not to admit. They bought front row seats. Phones came up. Curtains twitched, and the lady with the visor, Beverly, the HOA star of Bright Mesa Estates, planted herself by the curb with a clipboard that appeared out of thin air. Her little white dog yapped like the warm-up act. The young officer had the stiff walk of a former linebacker. The older one carried 20 years of late calls. In his eyes, they kept their tone steady. I kept my hands visible. We all pretended this was just another Wednesday, while the sun turned the corrals gold. "Sir, we got a call about suspicious activity on this property. Mind telling us what you're doing here?" That's how it began. And I swear, I tasted metal when I answered what I'm doing is standing on my father's ground, with the key that opens my own gate. My name is Caleb Morgan. County records will say the same. Beverly lifted her chin, like she had a private line to the truth, and said, "I've lived here 8 years and never seen this man once. People who own property don't pull up in. That nodding at my Ford like it had insulted her ancestors. And yeah, that happened. I did what I've learned to do, not because I enjoy it, but because paper keeps nights from getting worse. I walked to the truck. Slow, every eye on my back, pulled the glove box folder. I hate that I keep and brought over the boring stack that proves a life tax. Bills feed invoices, that old photo of me in braces, holding a board while Dad drives a nail home. The older officer's shoulders relaxed a notch. "The kid leaned in, that your dad?" he asked. And I said, "Yeah, and that hinge. He's fixing still squeaks." If you want to hear it, Beverly blew air through her nose like a tea kettle and said papers can be faked, and that's when the heat rose, but I held the line, ma'am. You don't know my name or my story, and you're comfortable deciding what I don't own based on what my jacket, my truck, the fact I don't wave at your gazebo nights. We have standards here, she said. And I nodded, so do I. Mine start with a question instead of a phone call. The older cop handed back my folder. Like respect is something that can pass from palm to palm if you don't drop it. "Mr. Morgan, this checks out." We had to respond. "I get it," I said. "I do." But Beverly was not done auditioning. Run his ID. Anyway, if he's telling the truth, he won't mind. And I stepped close to the fence so she could see my face without the lights bouncing. "You want my whole life story because I'm unfamiliar to you?" "Do you ask that of every delivery driver, or just the ones who don't look like the country club?" Kept them warm, a couple neighbors shifted. The dog yapped like a smoke alarm. A kid whispered, "Whoa," like he'd waited all summer for this episode. I could have stopped there, taken the officer's nod, and gone back to the barn. But after a week of rooms where people fought about mailbox lids, like the Republic depended on it, something in me refused to let suspicion be the last word. So I told her what I normally don't, since we're sharing titles like they're weapons. Here's mine. I'm the executive director of a national trade group that supports community associations. Yeah, HOAs. My office touches training and policy for thousands of boards. So Beverly, if you've ever waved a covenant around, odds are I've read something like it and reminded someone not to use it to hurt their neighbor. The young officer's eyebrows climbed a rung. A few phones lowered, because shock has a way of making you forget to record. Beverly tried to scoff, but it came out thin. If that were true, you'd show up at our meetings instead of hiding behind your fence. I gave her a small smile. I've been on planes and in hearing rooms, trying to keep communities from turning into battlegrounds over patio furniture. I'm not hiding. I'm working. And this gate isn't a stage. We were done legally. That much was clear. The sergeant said, "It plain, no crime, no cause to continue." "Ma'am, you filed your report. We investigated. We're finished." Beverly tossed a last spark. This is how rules get broken. And I shook my head. Rules break when people weaponize them to keep others out. Tools, build weapons, harm, decide what you're holding. That's when the neighborhood changed its weight. A silver braid near the mailbox called out that her dad traded hay with the Morgans. Before Bright Mesa was even a brochure, the guy in the cap said. Beverly calls cops when a kid bounces a basketball after 9. Suddenly, I was standing in a different kind of light. The almost apology kind. The "we should have known." And I didn't gloat, because I've learned both in boardrooms and barnyards that a win that humiliates just sets up the next fight. The rookie swallowed and said he was sorry for how it felt. We move fast, sometimes too fast, and I gave him what I wish someone had given me 15 years ago. Next time the call is vague, ask if you're responding to a crime or to a person's assumptions. Those feel different if you let yourself feel them. The sergeant nodded like he'd already learned that the hard way. News in an HOA travels faster than wind. By the next night, the clubhouse was full of folding chairs and folded arms. I wasn't going to go, too. Neighbors came down the lane and said, "If you don't show, Beverly writes the ending." So I walked in with the mud still on my boots, because authenticity beats cologne every time. Walter, the HOA president, tried to keep it civil. Beverly jumped in. Anyway, I did what any responsible resident would do. We have standards. I was protecting our community. A few groans leaked out, which in Bright Mesa is like a bar fight. Walter asked if I wanted to respond, and I said, "I'm not here to fight with Beverly." I drove through my own gate, and 10 minutes later my barn was red and blue. Not because I stole my own hay, but because a neighbor decided unfamiliar equals dangerous. That's not safety. That's suspicion. If you'd ever come to a single meeting, if you introduced yourself, if you made an effort, she said, stacking ifs like they'd carry the day. And I told the only truth that matters. Across a fence line, respect isn't a performance. It's not something you save for faces you recognize. It belongs at the start. For everyone, I didn't hide. I worked. I traveled. I kept my father's ranch alive. And because you asked yes, I led a national group that supports HOAs. I've sat with more board presidents than you've met cashiers. I know. When a rule is a ladder, and when it's a club, we're not building a fortress here. We're supposed to be building a neighborhood. A single clap popped like a starter pistol. Then more, not a standing ovation. More like a room deciding it wanted to be better than it had been. 24 hours earlier, Walter found a spine and said, "We've let tone replace care. We owe Mayor Morgan more than paperwork." We owe each other introductions. That sound like respect. Beverly said, "You're turning on me for one call." The silver braid said no. Bev for the habit. Did everything heal that night? No life is a stack of Tuesdays. 2 mornings later, I got a compliance email titled Light Pollution with a photo of my porch bulb at 9:06 p.m. 12 lumens. Over the angle looked suspiciously like Beverly's second-story window. I laughed too hard. Swapped the bulb. Wrote back, "Thanks for the heads up, we're all learning." And 20 minutes later, Walter replied, "We're reviewing our complaint process and reminding folks to talk before they enforce small win. The kind you can live with, the kind that keeps a gate from turning into a border. That's the real victory to me. Not that I got to drop a title or wave a deed, it was that a rookie officer heard the difference between a crime and a fear, that a room full of neighbors heard rules, are tools and people are neighbors. And maybe Beverly went home, stood in her kitchen, watched the kettle steam, and realized steam is not a strategy. So here's the question I'm leaving on your porch. Like a note under the mat, was Beverly completely wrong? Or was she doing what a lot of us were trained to do? See unfamiliar and label it unsafe. Where is the line between caution and prejudice? Have you been on the wrong end of a call? You didn't earn. Have you made one and wished you hadn't? Because I can tell you how it felt for me. Like watching someone try to erase your name with a wet thumb. And I can tell you what cut through. Not the folder, not the title, but the neighbors who stepped forward and said, "Enough. This is our street. We do better. If this hits something in you, hit like, so it travels." Subscribe if you want more true stories told. Plain. And drop your take in the comments. Should I have handled it differently? Should Beverly face censure or a conversation? What are the rules where you live and who do they serve? Tell me your own moment of being misjudged or making it right. I'll be in there reading, and if you live behind a gate, maybe knock before you call, we might be home.